The wealth the U.S. enjoys today was built on the backs of the stolen lives and labor of millions of enslaved and formerly enslaved Black people. After emancipation, there was no real freedom, as Blacks were denied land, subjected to Jim Crow segregation laws, stripped of the right to vote, medically experimented on, relegated to substandard housing, redlined, blocked from GI military benefits, and more. The abuse and trauma continues today, with negative impacts on wealth, inequalities in education, disparities in health, unfairness in the system of punishment, and more. Legacies from the enslavement era remain in today's economy, still generating wealth. Financial companies were enriched, life insurance policies were sold on the lives of enslaved persons, and newspaper publishers inflamed white terrorism. Reparations is not a pie-in-the-sky concept or a strange, extreme idea. Reparations is a well-established principle in both U.S. and international law for those who have suffered gross human rights abuses. However, there have been missed opportunities to provide repair and amends to Black people. Reparations were paid when chattel slavery was abolished in the nation's capital in 1862, but the reparations were not paid to the newly freed Black people. The reparations went to their former white enslavers. Similarly, the British government paid reparations when it abolished slavery in 1833, again, not to its formerly enslaved, but to the former white enslavers. And those reparation payments continued for centuries after both the enslaved and enslavers were dead, all the way up through 2015. At the end of the Civil War, newly freed Black leaders helped develop Special Field Order 15, where Black families were able to claim up to 40 acres of land. However, the reparations provision was stripped before it could become actualized, and the empty promise of 40 acres and a mule has echoed ever since. But Black people have never stopped advocating for reparations. Beginning in 1783, Belinda, kidnapped from Africa at age 12 and enslaved by the wealthy royal family in Boston for 50 years, submitted court petitions for payment for her enslavement and was granted 15 pounds per year. In 1870, Henrietta Wood petitioned a court for and was granted $2,500 for the years stolen from her life. To date, that sum, although a pittance, is the largest on record to be granted by a U.S. court for enslavement. In 1898, Callie House helped spearhead the first mass-based reparations movement in the United States, whose mission was to organize mutual aid and pass federal pension legislation to compensate formerly enslaved persons. She was wrongfully convicted and imprisoned for her organizing. A follower of the early 20th century Marcus Garvey movement, later to be known as Queen Mother Audley Moore, championed the cause of reparations throughout the century, inspiring leaders in both the civil rights and Black Power movements. These movements inspired Japanese Americans, resulting in the 1988 passage of the Civil Liberties Act, which granted them reparations for unjust incarceration during World War II. Spurred by Black reparation activists, Congressman John Conyers introduced H.R. 40 in 1989 to establish a federal commission to examine slavery and discrimination and recommend remedies. After the 2020 George Floyd murder, millions protested for Black lives, and a multitude of organizations dedicated to reparations emerged. Cities nationwide began establishing reparations commissions and task forces, and California established the first statewide reparations task force. Academic and religious institutions began publicly supporting reparations. Traumatic massacres in Rosewood, Tulsa, Elaine, Wilmington, and more were publicized, along with revelations that Georgetown University stands because of the enslaved peoples that were sold to keep the school financially stable. But some people don't believe that people alive today should have to pay for something they personally were not responsible for. We all stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. Although today's whites may be innocent of past harms, many stand in privileged positions because of the past and benefit from a society immersed in white supremacy. There is no statute of limitations on addressing human rights violations. Some people feel that reparations is only about the money. Reparations is more than the cutting of a check. A reparations settlement can be fashioned in as many ways as necessary to equitably address the countless manifestations of injury sustained from chattel slavery and its continuing vestiges. It's a new day with new energy and new possibilities. Reparations can be a vehicle for transformative change. Indeed, reparations may be the only policy that comprehensively addresses the very crux of racism and inequity, the harms from the enslavement era that still manifest today in nearly every aspect of life. The fruit we see now emanated from historic seeds that were planted and watered for generations. Reparations are no longer a stretch of the imagination or an unobtainable goal, but very likely a reality and achievable in our lifetime.